Hello, welcome to Axiom Flux News on the 11th of March 2015. Putting the Flux out a little bit late due to some technical issues, but without a delay or any more of a delay. My first article is Target Practice. Hitler bombed thousands of Germans to test V2 rockets. Reveals a secret archive. There's the images there in 1945 when damage caused by a V2 rocket attacks in Britain. During the World War II, Nazi leader Adolf Hitler bombed thousands of Germans with V2 rockets to test their force, putting the blame for the damage on Allied forces, according to a highly classified archive kept secret for decades by a German collector. The top secret SS documents revealing how Hitler used German citizens as live targets for bombing practice before attacking Britain and continental Europe in the last years of World War II. Are to be sold off by a London auction house on March the 18th. This is reported in the Daily Mail. Fail. But there you go. Some images there of the documents on the left, document on the bottom right here, and the image of the V2 rocket. All images you can see on Twitter, on the Daily Mail online. The archive, much of which is written in coded German, is believed to provide evidence that ballistic missiles V2, the V standing for Vergeltungswaffe, or vengeance weapon. My German's not very good, by the way, so I do apologise, but these were tested in towns and cities in Pomerania before they were fired against London, Antwerp and Liège, killing over 7,000 Allied civilians. The documents were issued by a secret unit, Kommandostal S, to report the scale of devastation. The A4 papers were rescued from being burned to ashes at the last days of the war. For nearly 70 years, the papers were kept by a German collector, but now they are expected to be sold at Chiswick auctions in London for £2,500. There's a little video here of a German V2 rocket test and failures. There you go. Shocking images, really. The next article. Jeremy Clarkson is huge talent, says Cameron. The Top Gear host joked he was off to the job centre, but said he had regrets following an alleged fracas with a TV producer. Over YouTube or a video, of Clarkson.
I've been suspended, haven't you? Yeah, but you resigned.
A phlegmatic Jeremy Clarkson always knew he'd be talking to a TV camera today, but it should have been in the Top Gear studio, not outside his London home. However, after allegations that he aimed a punch at one of his producers, Clarkson's Top Gear career has been parked for the time being, and as a result, so have those of his co-stars.
Do you sport, Jeremy?
In many ways, no. I've said many times before, the man is a knob, but I quite like him. It's all getting a bit ridiculous.
What do you understand about what actually happened?
Not very much. I was blind drunk. No further comment, sorry.
The Top Gear team had been filming in the north of England when Clarkson reportedly clashed with producer Oisin Timon about dinner.
Okay, you want to raise sunshine?
Jeremy Clarkson is no stranger to controversy at the BBC. He's already on a final warning after mouthing a racist word. The Director General was tackled about him in Parliament.
You wouldn't be involved in an issue like suspending Jeremy Clarkson for allegedly punching somebody, would you?
I have been involved in that. I am involved in that. We have an independent, we have an inquiry taking place.
More sensible than ever.
The issue is a thorny one for the BBC because Clarkson and Top Gear bring in many millions to the corporation coffers. Top Gear is the most watched factual programme in the world. It's sold in 214 countries and has around 350 million viewers worldwide. Episodes of the latest UK series have drawn audiences of more than 6 million, making it BBC Two's most popular programme by miles. The centrepiece of the show in front of a live audience is filmed here at Dunsfold Airfield in Surrey, but not this week. Scores of die-hard Top Gear fans should be here at Dunsfold watching Gary Lineker hurtling around the circuit as the star in a reasonably priced car and lapping up the banter of Jeremy Clarkson and his chums as they record the latest episode of Top Gear. But with Clarkson suspended for allegedly taking a swing at one of his producers, the BBC apparently has ditched the rest of the series. Tonight, the Prime Minister waded in on Clarkson's behalf.
He is a constituent of mine. He's a friend of mine. He's a huge talent. I see that he said he regrets some of what happens. What I'd say, because he is a talent and he does amuse and entertain so many people, including my children, who'll be heartbroken if Top Gear is taken off air. I hope this can be sorted out because it's a great program and he's a great talent.
Jeremy Clarkson has made his name and a lot of money from steering clear of political correctness, but time and again it's proved to be a high-risk strategy. Many will be wondering whether he'll see the funny side if his alleged punch ended up flooring his own career. David Bowden, Sky News.
Well, that's it. You know, the Jeremy Clarkson pictured here. He'll talk about the lining up of nurses and shooting them dead in front of their families. And he'll talk about cars and other things and racist comments. But when he talks about dinner, if you confront Clarkson and talk about dinner, oof, you're likely to get a punch in the face. And as Cameron said, you know, he's a good friend of him. He's talented, and he appears to be above the law. Not Cameron, because we all know about King Cameron being above the law, but He's trying to make out like Clarkson is. I mean, at the end of the day, if you punch somebody, is that not assault? So there you go, without further ado. The next one, ACLU, or ACLU. NSA have taken control of internet backbone. We're suing them. This is 27 seconds ago it was posted. I've had this article up for about half an hour now. The American Civil Liberties Union, which is abbreviated the ACLU, has filed a lawsuit today challenging the NSA on its dragnet over the international communications on the web. Every time you email someone overseas, the NSA copies and searches your messages. It makes no difference if you or the person you're communicating with has done anything wrong. The NSA believes your message could contain information relating to the foreign affairs of the United States because of whom you're talking to or whom you're talking about. It may hold onto it for as long as 3 years, sometimes much longer. A new ACLU lawsuit filed today challenges this dragnet spying, called upstream surveillance, on behalf of Wikimedia and a broad coalition of educational, human rights, legal, and media organizations whose work depends on the privacy of their communications. The plaintiffs include Amnesty International USA, the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and The Nation magazine, and many other organizations whose work is critical to the functioning of our so-called democracy. But the effects of the surveillance we're challenging goes far beyond these organizations. The surveillance affects virtually every American who uses the internet to connect with people overseas, and many who do little more than email their friends or family or browse the web. And it should be disturbing to all of us, because free expression and intellectual inquiry will wither away if the NSA is looking over our shoulders while we're online. The world first learned of the existence of upstream surveillance from a whistleblower known as Edward Snowden. Spying revelations in June of 2013. Since then, official disclosures and media reports have shown that the NSA is routinely seizing and copying the communications of millions of ordinary Americans while they are traveling over the internet. The NSA conducts this surveillance by tapping directly into the internet backbone inside the United States. The network of high-capacity cables and switches that carry vast numbers of Americans' communications with each other and with the rest of the world. Once the NSA copies the communications, it searches the contents of almost all international text-based communications, and many domestic ones as well, for search terms relating to its, in quotes, targets. In short, the NSA has cast a massive dragnet over Americans' international communications. Inside the United States, upstream surveillance is conducted under a controversial spying law called the FISA Amendment Act, or the FISA Amendments Act, which allows the NSA to target the communication of foreigners abroad and to intercept Americans' communications with those foreign targets. The main problem with the law is that it doesn't limit which foreigners can be targeted. The NSA's targets may include journalists, academics, government officials, tech workers, scientists, and other innocent people who are not connected even remotely with terrorism or suspected of any wrongdoing. The agency sweeps up Americans' communications with all of those targets. And as our lawsuit explains, the NSA is exceeding even the authority granted by the FISA Amendments Act. Rather than limit itself to monitoring Americans' communications with foreign targets, the NSA is spying on everyone, trying to find out who might be talking or reading about those targets. As a result, Countless innocent people will be caught up in the NSA's massive net. For instance, a high school student in the United States working on a term paper might visit a foreign website to read a news story or download research materials. If those documents happen to contain an email address targeted by the NSA, like this news report does, chances are the communications will be intercepted and stored for further scrutiny. The same would be true if an overseas friend, colleague, or contact sent the student a copy of that news story in an email message. As former NSA Director Michael Hayden recently put it, let me be really clear. NSA doesn't just listen to bad people. NSA listens to interesting people, people who are communicating information. That doesn't sound like much of a limitation on the NSA's spying, and it's not. Like many Americans, the plaintiffs in our lawsuit communicate with scores of people overseas who the NSA likely finds interesting. For instance, researchers at Human Rights Watch depend on foreign journalists, lawyers, political dissidents, and witnesses to human rights abuses for information crucial to their advocacy and reporting back home. Wikimedia communicates with millions of people abroad, and many of whom read or contribute to Wikipedia, one of the largest repositories of human knowledge on Earth. We know, thanks to Edward Snowden, that the NSA is interested in what some of those users are reading. The fact that upstream surveillance is supposedly focused on international communications is hardly a saving grace. Americans spend more and more of their lives communicating over the internet, and more of those communications are global in nature. Whether we realize it or not, an email from a woman in Philadelphia to her mother in Phoenix might be routed through Canada without either one of them knowing it. Similarly, companies like Microsoft and Google often store backup copies of their US customers' emails on servers overseas, again with hardly anyone the wiser. The NSA is peeking inside virtually all of these. Our plaintiffs have had to go out of their way to take measures, sometimes at a high cost, to protect their communications from their own government. Despite these precautions, the chilling effect is palpable. NSA surveillance makes it harder for the plaintiffs to gather information from sources who believe that by sharing information over the internet, they are also sharing it with the US government and the intelligence agencies it partners with. The work of the human rights and free knowledge organizations is profoundly undermined by this unconstitutional surveillance, and we're all for it. And there you go. So not only just the NSA, but in the UK we've got the GCHQ, and it has been said and spoke about that the GCHQ are taking further steps and a bit more enthusiasm when it comes to surveillance than the NSA. So if that's anything to go by. Moving on to one of my other articles from the Telegraph. This is the Lib Dem scandal, a dodgy donation received by party. Goes into this article. There's several images here. A fake businessman told to use backdated. Hold on. He's told to use backdated checks and give money via relatives in order to hide his name from official donor registers. A key member of Nick Clegg's inner circle accepted a potentially illegal donation for the Liberal Democrats and arranged a private meeting for the would-be donor with the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and an investigation by the Telegraph discloses today. An undercover reporter posing as a wealthy Indian businessman was told he could donate money to the party via a cousin. He was also advised to spread gifts among other family members and even backdate a check to the party. This would allow the true source of the donation to remain hidden on the official register of political donations. The donation was sought by Ibrahim Tagore, the party's former chief fundraiser, who is standing for MP in Brent Central, and boasts that his campaign is the third best funded in the country. Earlier this month, he accepted a cheque on behalf of the party for more than £7,500 from the proxy donor, and the senior Liberal Democrat said the money would open doors. He then invited the undercover reporter to a fundraising dinner and private meeting with Danny Alexander. At the meeting, the chief secretary to the Treasury encouraged the fake businessman to provide further financial support to the party, but said that he did not want to intrude on the details of his donations. In a private discussion, Mr. Alexander said, "I just want you to know that I personally am very, very grateful for what you're doing and for what you're offering to do. It genuinely will make a difference to the results of the election. But shh, don't say it too loud." The dinner before the meeting, Lord Fox, a former chief executive of Lib Dems, acknowledged that some donors did not want their support to be made public because of their professional positions. But anything under 7,500 isn't reported and doesn't have to be reported to the Electoral Commission. During a separate meeting, Mr. Tagore told the businessman that his donation and a promise of a further gift of up to £100,000 would open doors and that the party would be very helpful. A 5-month undercover investigation by this newspaper has exposed how potential donors are wooed by some of Britain's most senior government figures. During the investigation, in which donations worth £9,100 were sent by the businessman to the Lib Dems, our reporter was given access to senior members of the party. He was introduced to figures including Mr. Alexander and Lord Ashdown, invited to a speech given by Vince Cable, taken to Nick Clegg's House of Commons office and offered a meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister. The donation scandal exposed will raise fears that one of Britain's governing parties is seeking to hide the sources of its money as it becomes more desperate to raise funds in the run-up to the general election. The party funded much of its 2005 election campaign with a £2.4 million donation from Michael Brown, who was later convicted of conning his victims out of tens of millions of pounds. The party was cleared of wrongdoing over the donation. There you go, Lord Fox, pictured there above. The Labour Party has also faced 2 major criminal inquiries into allegations that it also sought to hide the source of donations, yet pledges to reform the system are today exposed as failing. Under electoral laws, political parties are required to declare the source of donations. Rules set out by the Electoral Commission state that intermediaries must not be used as an attempt to evade the controls of permissibility and transparency. The Telegraph began its investigation into the Lib Dem fundraising after receiving information that the party was accepting questionable donations and, in some cases, offering favours in return for support. In October, the undercover reporter attended an event in North London to raise money for Mr. Tagore. Mr. Tagore is seen as one of the rising stars of the party, having been appointed as a spokesman on racial equality by Mr. Clegg in January. The reporter told him that he wanted to support his election campaign and the party generally, but wanted to keep his support discreet, did not want a public profile. Mr. Tagore explained that donors were available and able to give £1,500 to the party's local office, or £7,500 to the central party per year. Without the donation being declared, the reporter donated £1,450 to the party and asked for it to be earmarked for Mr. Tagore, staying under the publication limit. Mr. Tagore then explained how our businessman could donate larger sums without making his identity public. He said the reporter could make donations in the name of his cousins. He then suggested that a cheeky way of getting around the 7,500 rule was to backdate a cheque, so it appeared that the sum had been given in different years. The reporter explained that he planned to donate in the name of his cousin, saying, "So I would transfer, 7.5 grand to their account, and then they can make a call to your office. That shouldn't be a problem, should it? Mr. Taguri, are you? What you want to? It's I can't remember the figure. It's because it's cumulative one, so you're already done the 1,450. So it's the balance. There you go, big fat check. So reporter, 1,450, 7,500 for me, and for cousins they can do 7,500 directly. Mr. Taguri replied, "Exactly, yes." Mr. Taguri met the reporter again at the Lib Dems head office in January, following a meeting with the party's current fundraiser. Mr. Taguri and the reporter discussed a larger donation. The reporter said he hoped to give between 50 and 100, not pence, not pound, but thousands of pounds, to the party because he thought he could persuade his wife to go public. However, it was important for the situation to be a win-win, the reporter explained. Mr. Taguri offered to introduce the businessman to the party treasurer. He will have a good range of networks that you can access, I'm sure, and he'll be able to help you. The reporter explained that he wanted to get moving. "Well, when you do this, the doors will open for you," replied Mr. Taguri. "Make it happen, and then we've got a different scenario, okay? We're going to introduce you to the parties. They will be very, very helpful once they know you're helpful. That's when we know, the party will go. Right, this is a guy we like. We know he's supportive and we'll work out a plan if we need to. But also, I will help you at the same time. So don't worry." The reporter met Mr. Taguri next month. The next month. The reporter said he was interested in pursuing some housing grants to help his property investments. He asked if Mr. Taguri could put him in touch with anyone at the local councils. "We've got a very good person in the GLA, in London Authority. She does transport, but she may be able to help with housing," said Mr. Taguri. "If I'm elected, so I can then start doing things. I can do things to help if I'm elected." The prospective MP also said he would be able to invite the reporter and his fictional clients to dinners with senior party officials, including Mr. Clegg himself. The following week, the reporter contacted Mr. Taguri about his cousin's donations. "Ibrahim Taguri, I can drop the check in for you in the next. I saw my cousin at the weekend. He wrote in a text message. I've now given him the money. I could drop the check in for you in the next day or two." Mr. Taguri asked the amount. 7,650, replied the reporter. "Brilliant, thank you," replied Mr. Taguri. The reporter was then invited to a fundraising dinner attended by wealthy Lib Dem supporters. Lord Fox hosted the dinner at the Valandry restaurant in London. Mr. Alexander was the guest of honour. Lord Fox urged some of the guests to put their head above the parapet by donating above the £7,500 limit. Later, in the private meeting, Mr. Alexander thanked the reporter for his support and encouraged him to help with the party further. Mr. Taguri denied any wrongdoing. He said that he had not cashed the cheque and would have declared it properly. He added that he thought the cousin had given his own money and he was publicly declaring all donations, even those he was not required to disclose. "I have been as transparent as I possibly can," he said. In response to questions about helping the reporter with his business, Mr. Taguri said he was only proposing to give the reporter information that was in the public domain, and if there had been a conflict once he was elected as an MP, he would have taken himself out of that. A Lib Dem spokesman said, "Had the money come to us, which is as of yet hasn't, we would have declared the original source as is legally required, and we would have no intention of doing anything otherwise. The party said it was looking into the allegations. We've got a little video here, I'll play this because I'm all dried up with my mouth, need a drink. Back in a minute. Have a watch of this.
I'm more involved in the politics in India. I mean, I really want to kind of, come and say hello to you and see how, how I could possibly be involved. Because what I want to do, to be honest, is that I love to kind of keep a low profile on it.
Absolutely, yeah. You just write a note saying in an email, whether it's tracking it, it could be a check from yourself,
right?
But then you say this is a £15,000 contribution from myself and my wife.
You were suggesting that we'll meet your colleague as well last time actually. Yeah. I mean, it would be great to kind of meet up. I realize that I've been spending quite a lot of time here, but not necessarily gaining much. How can we just push a little bit here?
But we do this work.
Perfect.
Make it happen, and then we've got a different scenario.
So we've got a very good person in the GLA, in the London Authority, but she does transport, but she may be able to help with housing.
I mean, I just want you to know that I personally am very, very grateful for what you're doing and what you're offering to do, and to reassure you, it genuinely will make a difference to the result of the election. Do you mind if I take a picture of
you? Best is, it's just been brought to my attention that the previous articles I've just been discussing apparently haven't been showing up, so now I've just double checked on what's happened. That means you've missed, or potentially missed, quite a lot. So just a recap: target practice, Hitler bombed thousands of Germans, right? That's the RT one. Jeremy Clarkson came from the Sky News. Huge talent, says Cameron. The one to do with the NSA and taking control of the internet backbone. This is from Your Newswire, and the current one that we're discussing now is Telegraph. Came from the Telegraph, and that's the Lib Dem donor scandal, dodgy donations received by Nick Clegg's party. So apologies for that. As I did say, we're having some technical issues, and there's quite a lot to juggle being on your own on the panel, which is why I put a call out there for anybody who's interested in jumping on the Flux. You're more than welcome to drop an email to axiomcurb@live.com. And yeah, it'd be good to have you with myself or some of the other people on the panel at the Axiom Curb community. But going back onto this, without losing track, how the rules work. Donations to political parties are governed by the Political Parties, Elections and Referendums Act 2000, which requires party officials to report larger contributions to the Electoral Commission, naming the source of the money. Under the legislation, any individual can give money to the parties if they are registered to vote in Britain. Most companies registered in the UK can also donate. Parties are given 30 days from receipt of money, the date a cheque clears, to decide if they will accept it. If, after that period, a contribution is found to have been made by an impermissible donor, the party will most likely have to forfeit the sum, as well as facing a fine by the Electoral Commission. All donations over £7,500 to the headquarters of political parties must be reported to the Commission in a quarterly return. The contributions are then logged on the public register of donations on the Watchdog's website. Any further donations over £7,500 in the same year by individuals who have already given more than £7,500 must be reported to the Commission. Local or regional branches are required to report any donation over £1,500. The thresholds apply to the entire calendar year. Supporters have to add together any donations they receive from individuals to establish whether they reach the relevant threshold. If the sum of donations to local branches and the party headquarters exceed the limit of £7,500 in any year, then the total must be reported. Under the rules, an individual can act as an agent to facilitate a donation to a party on behalf of another person. However, they must ensure that the party is given the details of the actual donor and face an unlimited fine or up to a year in prison if it is not off. It is not. So there you go. There's an image of Ibrahim Tagore with a model Lily Cole in a picture posted on his Instagram page. Electoral Commission guidance states transferring a donation to an agent rather than directly to a regulated donee must not be used as an attempt to evade the controls of permissibility and transparency. The legislation also states that if someone is giving more than $7,500, the sum has been provided to them by someone else, then there is an obligation on them to declare this in writing to the party. Each party is required to appoint a treasurer who becomes legally responsible for ensuring the organisation complies with all of the rules. Anybody who's daft enough to appoint themselves as a treasurer for any party or anything really, to be responsible for that, well, I'd love to know how they sleep at night. Under the legislation, anyone involved in a political party receiving a donation by an impermissible donor is carrying out an offence, as is anyone who knowingly passes false information to the treasurer about a donor or the amount of a donation. It is also an offence to purposefully withhold any material information from the treasurer relating to the donor or amount of a donation. In each case, offenders face unlimited fines and up to a year in prison. Despite a series of scandals of donations, however, there have been no major prosecutions under the Act. Some senior police officers are understood to believe the legislation is virtually useless because of the number of potential loopholes. How Tagore suggested working around the rules. Well, Tagore told the undercover reporter he could make donations in the name of his cousin or cousins. He could also get around the annual threshold of $7,500 on reporting donations by backdating checks, so it appeared that sums had been donated in different years. He also said a husband and wife could give $3,000, and it remains utterly private. Quite an in-depth, deep article there, but good information. The next one, I'll not play any of these. Do apologise. Can't zoomed up here too much. But the new film that exposes practices of the Church of Scientology as told by former members. This is another briefly in-depth article as well. It comes with a video. I'll play this first because I just need to move around a bit. Got a bit of a numb bum at the minute.
Someone had told me there's this cult, and it would make anything possible in your life.
I was deeply convinced that we were going to save the world.
It was a transcendent experience. You feel euphoric.
Everything you do for endless trillions of years depends on what you do with and in Scientology.
They sell it all in the beginning as something quite logical. You take on a matrix of thought that is not your own.
It's so strong that it sticks you like glue.
Very controllable, very suggestible. You just don't see it happening to you. You justify so much. There is no logical explanation other than faith.
Well, there you go. This is another article. So it's the film of Church of Scientology doesn't want you to see. It represents the highest profile exposure of the controversial organization. 8 former members feature in the documentary, sharing stories of their experiences that include allegations of physical abuse, forced isolation, and brainwashing. Mike Rinder spent virtually all of his life in the Church of Scientology, and everybody knew he was a member, including his wife and 2 children, his mother, his brother, and his sister. From the age of 6, he was raised in the church, eventually rising to become its chief spokesman. There's an image there of Mike Rinder on the far right. Not that he's probably far right, it's just far right on the image, and He was a member of Scientology for virtually his whole life before fleeing the church in 2007. He's now part of a high-profile film about the organisation. After spending more than a year in a disciplinary facility known as The Hole, where he says he and other Scientology executives were confined, and increasingly disillusioned Rinder left the church in 2007. It was while in that Los Angeles compound that Rinder, now 59 years old, says he realized the church was a road to hell and that he had to get out, even if penniless and without his family. I literally walked away with a briefcase, says Rinder, who now lives what he calls an entirely new life in Florida with a new wife, a son, and a stepson. Rinder's story is one of 8 from former church members that make up the emotional arc of the documentary Going Clear, Scientology and the Prison of Belief, which opens in theaters in the US on Friday and will air on HBO at the end of the month. It's the highest profile exposure of the controversial religion founded by science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard. The Church of Scientology boasts a list of stars followers, including actor John Travolta. The film paints a disturbing portrait of Scientology, claiming physical abuse happens regularly and that the church drives wedges between families and by labeling non-Scientology spouses and parents suppressive persons. The documentary also singles out several of Scientology's most famous faces, including Tom Cruise and John Travolta, for not using their power to change the organization. The church has mounted a considerable campaign against the film, including full-page ads in the New York Times and Los Angeles Times and a series of internet videos. The church derides the documentary's sources as bitter, vengeful apostates. It also alleges Gibney didn't present the film's allegations for response and calls the film a one-sided false diatribe. The church has also vigorously denied allegations of physical abuse or confinement. It has previously said that managers like Rinder were never held against their will, but were subject to ecclesiastical discipline. The film's director, Alex Gibney, and journalist Lawrence Wright, whose book the film is based on, spoke of Going Clear as empathetic toward those lured to the church, but critical of its enablers. They're not attacking the beliefs of the church, Wright said. You can believe whatever you want to believe, and that's fine. It doesn't matter if it's crazy. There are a lot of crazy religions. It's the practices and abuses that are going on in Scientology that I think the book and the film shed light on. Much of Going Clear depends on the testimony of former church members. They do so despite the likelihood of aggressive responses from the church. The church's Freedom magazine has published harsh appraisals of those it terms discredited sources. Rinder is labelled the lady killer. Haggis is called the Hollywood hypocrite. Gibney says private investors or investigators, investigators, do apologise, have recently tailed several sources from the film. Many also struggle with a sense of shame at having been members of a church they now speak against. I spent a lot of time on the idea of auditing because it's kind of talking cure. Gibney says, referring to Scientology's therapy-like practice. So at the beginning of the film, people talk their way in, but by the end, they talk their way out. Speaking out has become their way of not only leaving the church, but helping others who might be suffering under the abuses. The idea of speaking out is fundamental to the film. This is a church practices, L. Ron Hubbard, founder of Scientology, with an early version of a e-meter used to locate areas of spiritual distress. Former members are seen in the film as sensible, curious people who only learn of the church's more idiosyncratic beliefs. and practices after years of indoctrination. Everything about Scientology isn't bad, Reader said. It's the boiling frog problem of you start with something, it seems kind of nice. You're in the pot of water, it's kind of cool in here, but the heat keeps turning up and turning up and turning up. And pretty soon, you're a boiled frog. Gibney and Wright are pushing for change on two fronts: that tax authorities in the US might reconsider its classification of Scientology, and that the church's celebrity members act against the alleged abusers. But they also hope that going clear will serve as, Wright says, a bulwark against the kinds of intimidation that the church has launched in the past. The goal was to get enough people that it emboldened others who would know they wouldn't be in this alone, Wright said. There was a lot of fear and a lot of tears in reporting this story. There you go. Next article, which is this one. Bit all over the place today. Ferguson Police Chief Tom Jackson resigns. Bit of breaking news, really. Zoom it up for those who may need it a little bit bigger to read. Ferguson Police Chief Thomas Jackson answers questions from the media about his officers' handling of the release. Thomas Jackson, the embattled police chief of Ferguson, resigned on Wednesday, a week after federal investigators painted his department as having a racial bias and routinely violating residents' constitutional rights. It is with profound sadness that I am announcing I am stepping down from position as chief, Jackson wrote in a letter to the city leaders. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch reported that city officials initially wanted Jackson's departure effective immediately, but the chief said both sides later settled on March the 19th so that Jackson could assist with a transition team. A little bit like what the Conservatives came out with, saying that, no, after general election, we've got to let King Cameron stay number 10. We've just got to. Right, so Jackson, commander of the suburban St. Louis force for 5 years, has been under fire since last August when white Ferguson officer Darren Wilson fatally shot 18-year-old Michael Brown, who was black and unarmed. Not that, I don't really need to point this out for those people that do watch the Flux. You're quite aware of it yourself. But maybe if you're new to this and you're not really sure, then all this race stuff, black, white, bleeding pink, yellow, whatever it is, it's just a complete irrelevance. It doesn't matter what colour they were. If you've got officers, who fatally shooting people for no justifiable reason, which is pretty hard to justify, but in my opinion, I don't think it makes a difference what colour your skin is really. Apart from it starting some sort of race war. The incident, which sparked months of protest and national debate about race and police behaviour, led to a federal investigation of the Ferguson Police Department. So, for those recently who might have tuned into a couple of Alex Jones's talk shows, and those that are aware about the Louis Farrakhan's speeches, where he's mentioned Alex Jones. Within that, they've both put their side across, and at the end of the day, that's what the picture paints. Both men were prominently named throughout the DOJ's 100-page reporting. Investigators faulted top officials for encouraging police to aggressively ticket motorists, particularly African Americans, as a means to generate money. In one example, the DOJ highlighted Shaw and Jackson's emails exchange about increased court revenue for March 2011 being more than $179,000, beat our next biggest month in the last 4 years by over $17,000, Jackson wrote. Wonderful, the city manager replied. Ferguson city officials will meet with the Justice Department in the coming weeks to negotiate how to make reforms. The federal government can sue and force reform if the sides can't agree. Ferguson Mayor James Knowles has said the city wouldn't settle with the DOJ if the negotiations do not lead to mutual satisfaction. US Attorney General Eric Holder told reporters last week that the federal government would dismantle the Ferguson Police Department if necessary. One option would be for the St. Louis County Police Department to serve Ferguson, a town of 21,000. Federal and state investigations into Brown's death cleared Wilson. Officials said physical evidence and reliable witness accounts support the officer's version of what happened. Wilson told investigators that Brown attacked him and that he was in fear of his life when he was shot the team multiple times in the middle of the street on August the 9th. The officer resigned from the department after a St. Louis County grand jury declined to indict him in late November. Jackson, 56, has worked in law enforcement for more than 3 decades. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve this great city and to serve with all of you, Jackson wrote in his resignation letter. I will continue to assist the city in any way I can in my capacity as private citizen. The story has been updated since it was originally posted. Please check back for updates. That was from the Yahoo. There you go. So, I'm not sure what you want to think of that, but there you go. That's my final article for the Flux. Sorry, I've got nobody on the panel for any comments, so if you ever got a comment, please leave one below in the YouTube discussion section, because it's not often we do get comments, and it would be nice to hear your thoughts on the things we do here at Axiom Curve. So there you go, but that's all I've got. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you've appreciated the Flux I've put across. And do join us again tomorrow, where hopefully I'm not on my own, but you never know. There's always room for anybody that's interested. I do keep repeating this, and people do get in touch, so if you want to be one of them, you know what to do. You can either visit the axiomcurve.org website or send an email if you don't want NSA spying, that is. Check the website out, but if you're not bothered, then send an email to axiomcurve@live.com, and I will see you all tomorrow. Well, you'll probably see my Flux, but there you go. Anyway, I'm off. I'm going to have a smoke, and then I'm going to bed. Catch you later, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Peace out. One love.